Hey everyone, Gina Francine here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a morning anchor and reporter in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I've teamed up with Media Mangy today discussing a very important topic that's actually affecting all of us, and that is COVID-19. So we're actually in for a special treat today. We don't normally get this. Normally you all turn on the news or social media and you see people like me expressing to you all what's going on and how you need to stay safe. But today we have Dr.CalvinSun. He's going to actually join in the live with me, and he is a E.R doctor in New York City. He's been on the front lines of this pandemic since day one, working tirelessly around the clock, trying to make sure that everyone is safe. So he will actually be joining the live shortly, but it's an exciting time where you can actually ask him questions as well. Maybe you have a loved one that's been affected, that's in the hospital. I know actually just before I went on live, CEO Miami Mike, he's my uncle, and he's actually in the hospital right now dealing with this, and let him tell it, he's done every precaution that he can to try to stay safe, but sometimes it's just inevitable. Like, you can try to do every precaution, but if people around you aren't being safe, you can be affected. So I say that to say, you know, Dr. Sun, it's exciting that we're going to have him on the live, and he's actually going to join us now as soon as it connects. And then you all have a chance to ask him questions. Dr.
Hello.
Sun, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you've been working around the clock, and this is probably one of your few free times.
Yep, pretty much. A little tired.
I can imagine you're in New York. So I'm out here in Louisiana. This is our first time meeting, but
Nice to meet you.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Nice to meet you.
Yes,
That's how we people meeting nowadays.
well. Yes, absolutely. But I'm sure you've been hearing about our cases, especially New Orleans, constantly rising. One of the highest rates per capita out here in New Orleans. But out there in New York, you know, the Big Apple, what are you seeing on the front lines?
It's pretty much a war zone where ambulances lining down the block, waiting 5 hours just to get triaged. We have waiting rooms packed like sardines, 30, 40 people, all giving COVID-19 to one another. And giant emergency rooms that are stacked like a game of Tetris, where stretchers are just piled on stretchers. And you can't leave them outside, right? Because they're just going to freeze to death. So you try to keep them inside, but now you're seeing field tents going up everywhere, or refrigeration trucks for like makeshift morgues. So it's the city is changing, and all for the better, I think, because it is helping flatten the curve. But I think despite that, New York City has 8 million people, so more and more people are still coming into the emergency room, majority of whom don't need to be there.
And I was going to mention, you mentioned flattening the curve. That takes us at home doing what we need to do so that we're not infecting other people. As far as being proactive, what can we do to where we're not infecting others or you all? People don't think about you all. You all are dealing with these people on a daily basis. You all are exposed, and people don't realize that.
What else can you do is hashtag stay the fuck home. That's it.
Right.
You just stay home. It's so simple, and it's so difficult for a lot of us. But sometimes by doing nothing, you're doing a lot. Less is more. You know, don't just do something. Just stand there is a motto of mine, where a lot of people want to always be proactive, but sometimes doing nothing actually helps us, do our job better.
I saw your story earlier when you were taking the stuff off your face, and there have been several viral pictures of nurses and doctors and surgeons taking these masks off, and it just shows the severity of how long you all have these masks on your face. Walk me through it. Take me through the day of you dealing with this and the pressure, not just physically, but also emotionally, seeing families go through this.
Yeah, but how's my mask scar? Is it healing after a few hours?
Not really.
Yeah, you can see that. It's going to be probably a lifelong scars. I mean, I still have my first-degree burn from a rash from wearing the bunny suits, these chemical hazmat suits that my brother gave me, but it's better than getting infected and infecting other people. Every waking minute is a potential of infecting yourself or other people. Like the analogy I always use is you're literally running into a burning building where you can't see the fire, but smoke is everywhere. You could just drop dead at any moment, right? The building's about to collapse, and our job is to get as many people who don't need to be there outside of this burning building before it collapses on us. And by the way, we're trapped inside and we're naked, right? We're not adequately protected. So course it's going to do an emotional toll on us. Like, we're trying to just see as many patients as possible, because we know that every passing minute they stay in the emergency room is an increased chance of catching it in the air or touching something or giving it themselves when they bring it home with them to their family members. There's creating even more patients for us and not helping flattening the curve. So it's when we take care of patients, at least I do, I think of the present and the future, right? How do I make sure they don't come back? Because if they're there for an unnecessary test, or there for an unnecessary exam or x-ray or blood test that they don't really need, then they're just walking into a room of death when they go into that x-ray. Because we only have one x-ray room. We only want one CAT scan room in the emergency room. And guess who goes to those CAT scan rooms and x-rays? COVID-19 patients. So you're walking to a room of death and sucking in all that air. It's not like a negative pressure room. It doesn't have a window, right? And then you're going to get an x-ray that you don't need. The x-ray is going to be probably fine. Oh, great. You know, you didn't break a bone. You're going to go home, but then you go home with a party favor you never asked for. And you're going to give it to grandma, and then grandma's going to be on life support because of you in about a week. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I was going to ask you, for a lot of hospitals out here, per se, are actually saying call before you go to the hospital, because there are certain symptoms that you all are doing during triage to let people know if they even need to be tested. Are you all doing that out there as well?
At least when I'm running my team, right? If you don't need to be there, if you're walking and talking and your vitals are fine, you're turning straight around and you're going straight home, all right? Because the moment you enter the emergency room, you're going to get it, right? 90% of patients who get admitted to the hospital are now testing positive. It might as well be 100%, right? Because the test is only 66% sensitive, which means a 34% chance a negative test could be inaccurate. So if we're already hitting 90% on a test that's pretty specific but not very sensitive, right? It's most likely probably just 100%. Everyone catches it. You might as well catch it just by coming. You know what? What's the point of getting a test? You want to be positive? You want to confirm positive test? Just come to the emergency room. Just come on, say hi. We don't have to test you. Just touch our door handles and breathe in our air without any protection, and you're automatically positive. Congratulations. I'll write you a note, and you're positive. Because it's just mind-boggling how I had treated a patient for, like, they broke their foot. They can't walk, so they stay in the hospital just for a broken foot, and now they're COVID-19 positive. Oh, then I find out later they're on the they're intubated on the breathing machine, and then they're dead because they broke a foot and they couldn't walk home. Normally, would actually keep them in the hospital for physical therapy. Maybe because they're a little older, it's not safe to go home, and now they're dead because of COVID-19. Is that really worth a broken foot? Maybe it would be better to have ambulance them home and have them do PT at home in quarantine place. They're not going to go out anyway, right? Management decisions have shifted in this pandemic, that a lot of my colleagues who are much more ingrained in habits and clinical practice, and they're great doctors, have a very difficult time changing, because if you do something for the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's very difficult to change a practice standard. So, so when it comes to triage, things that we normally would take you in for in the emergency room, we have to change it. I mean, even Governor Cuomo signed an executive order a few days ago that literally gave us all these blanket immunity to do a lot of things that we normally wouldn't do because of this pandemic. He realizes, or at least his team of experts have told him, that maybe it's more dangerous to stay in the hospital now, right? So if you're a COPD with a lung disease and you look great, but you have underlying lung disease and you come to the emergency room because you just don't feel quite right, sometimes you get a little steroid, sometimes you get on oxygen. If you're still not good enough, your oxygen is still not picking up, you should stay in the hospital just to chill out a bit, because we have oxygen. You don't have that at home. But now that same person might actually die in the hospital, because if they're going to go straight to the COVID-19 floor, because it takes 2 days for a test. They're not going to wait down in the emergency room for a 2-day turnaround. They're going to go straight to the COVID-19, because it's safer to assume they have COVID-19 until otherwise proven. And then they're going to be exposed to other COVID-19 patients in that floor, sucking in all that viral load. And there's an evidence that increased mortality is related to increased viral load exposure. So they might die by going to the hospital, but at least they'll have oxygen support and medical staff. But if you go home, maybe you'll be fine because it's cleaner. Nobody's around to give you COVID-19, but there's no medical staff. There's no oxygen support. So you still might die at home. So what's the right answer, right? It depends on the patient and your risk tolerance. We're living in different times now.
But Dr. Sun, everyone's on edge right now because of this. And I mean, it's pollen season, especially out here in Louisiana. People are sniffing, people are coughing just due to that. What are the symptoms that we need to be aware of so we're not going to the hospital and to the doctor's office thinking we had COVID-19 when it's just an allergy?
There's no absolutes in medicine, so I think it's very entertaining when people are like, there are these clear differences here and clear differences in allergy, and these are the differences, and this is what to look out for. You're just gonna fuck yourself, right? We don't know enough about this disease. Now we know that COVID-19, one of the symptoms is diarrhea. That's it. No fever, no pain, no body aches, just diarrhea. So it could be food poisoning, right? You lose your sense of smell. That's another one. That could be a stroke, right? And everyone says, oh, allergies are so different from COVID-19. Who the fuck really knows? We don't know, right? The best thing to do is it depends on you. You are a unique human being that knows yourself better than any of us, better than any doctor, better than any person, especially me as an emergentologist, as an ER doctor. I'm meeting you for the first time. I don't know your allergy symptoms and what's typical, what's not. You know yourself better. Only you can say, this is different. There's something is wrong. And guess what? Do you really need to go to the emergency room for allergy symptoms? Right? If you are going to live, right, there's nothing that we can do for you in the hospital that you can already do at home, regardless if you're COVID-19 positive or you have allergies or you have both. As long as you're walking, talking, you hashtag stay the fuck home. All right?
Absolutely.
And you take Benadryl. All right? Benadryl's fine. You don't need to take steroids. You take Benadryl, right? If you think you cannot breathe and you're talking like this, and I don't think these are allergies. I don't think that's an allergic reaction. Maybe you should go to the ER to get oxygen, and then we'll take it from there. But up until then, 90% of the people I see on a day-to-day basis are totally fine. They're COVID-19 positive. They're going to be just fine. There's nothing I can do from the hospital for them. They need Tylenol and chicken noodle soup and some fluids. Nothing that they need to be in the emergency room for.
How is it out there in New York with the tests? Are you all running low on supplies, or even with the testing? I know out here in Louisiana, they're running low to the point where there are drive-through services. They're scanning your forehead from afar, and they're like, you don't even have a temperature. Go home.
Right. It's not about where you get. It's not about what you do. It's about how you do it. Right. I am like very frustrated that now we're getting all these tests. Everyone's coming to the emergency room for these tests, and I'm like baffled. Right. I'm not angry when I see them. You can tell me I'm very frustrated. But literally, as I said, you want to be positive, you don't need a test. Just come to my emergency room and breathe in that air, right? Because 90% of the people in my emergency room are positive. Then what's the point of getting a test? Okay, let's say you don't have COVID-19. Let's say you're perfectly fine and you need to get tested. I think testing is great. We need to screen the shit out of this to make sure who's has it, who doesn't, so we can have some data and epidemiology to contain this, right? I think testing is so important. But to come to the emergency room, right? Let's say you don't have it, you're perfectly healthy, you come to the emergency room, right? And you get swabbed for this test that's only 66% sensitive, right? And then it's going to be negative, right? Most likely it's going to be negative because you don't have it. And then 5 seconds later, some dude sits next to you and coughs in your face, right? And then on your way out, when you get your discharge papers, it's covered with COVID-19 because the nurse forgot to change their gloves. You can't control that. And then as you touch the door handle in the waiting room, you catch it because some other dude like with COVID-19 had touched it, or someone had sneezed on the way out 2 hours before and you sucked it all the air. It's an airborne virus. It can survive in the air for 3 hours, right? It's aerosolizable. And then you go home, you catch it in the subway. And then the neighbor says, hello. Hey, how was the ER test? Oh, it was easy. I got swabbed. I waited for 7 hours. I don't know why I waited that long. And then you get it from your neighbor. Or then you hug your loved one, your partner who has COVID-19 because they went to the grocery store and forgot to wear a mask. And then you get it. 3 days later, because that's how long it takes the test result to get back. You get a phone call. You're negative. And it was like, oh great, I don't have the virus. You're falsely reassured because you probably just gotten it right after you got swabbed. Then you hug grandma and you give her the virus, and then she's dead the next week. So
have there been any people who have tested positive, gotten better, and then gotten it again? Is that possible?
Yes, reinfections are possible. Like the doctor I'm taking a shift over tomorrow. I literally like 30 minutes ago, I just accepted a shift for a 7 a.m. call tomorrow. I'm going to go in because the doctor I'm taking over, I had covered their shifts like 3 weeks ago because they were sick with COVID-19. So I don't know how they got sick again, but they're sick again.
I'm sitting here thinking, so you all are the heroes in this. You're saving lives. You're being proactive. You're trying to keep us safe. But where's the light at the end of the tunnel? What happens when all of the doctors are exposed? You know, because at the end of the day, you all have families. You all have to go home too as well.
It really depends on various factors, right? If we can screen better, if we can be a little smarter about where people get tested, like a drive-through facility all over New York, right? So basically in the privacy of your car, when you get swabbed, nobody's around to cough on you or touch you. You just drive straight home, self-quarantine, and then you're good. Then the test result you get back is more accurate. Or a home test kit, right? A lot of people don't drive in New York, so drive-through facilities may not work. I don't like other like stand in lines because you might catch it while standing in line. You call 311, have them mail you a test kit, you swab yourself, you send it out, you stay self-quarantined, and then you're fine. That's one. And then you find out you're positive, you just stay in place for about 5 to 7 days, 14 days, don't go to the emergency room, right? And then you get better, right? Majority still get better. Only go to the emergency room if you need oxygen support. If people understood that. Number two is if the military goes full Wuhan and builds a completely new hospital from scratch, from bottom up, with negative pressure rooms, gives us the PPE we deserve, positive air purifying respirators, essentially astronaut spacesuits, so we don't give it to one another or give it to our family members, as you were mentioned. Like, that's how to stop the curve from going higher, is to not come home and bring it to our family members because we're dressed in like astronauts, right? And then put all the COVID-19 patients in this hospital, not on a boat. Last time we had COVID-19 on a boat, guess what happened? Diamond Princess. Like, it's a disaster waiting to happen, right? The boat says, oh, we're not taking COVID-19 patients. How the fuck are you going to figure that out, right? With a 66% sensitive test that takes 2 days, you're going to make them wait outside for 2 days for a second negative test? They're going to freeze to death. You know, all that somebody has to say is, oh, I have diarrhea and food poisoning. You take them off. It just takes one person with COVID-19 that's asymptomatic, an officer, a military person on that boat, to give it to everyone. It's like a bad zombie movie. So there's no way they can ensure that's non-COVID-19. So not a ship, but a new hospital with to start from scratch to take all the COVID-19 patients, and anyone who's positive just goes to the hospital if they need it and they get better. Nobody dies, right? We have enough ventilators if we need them, and then we get discharged and everyone has the antibodies, all right? And then number three, having a vaccine, all right? With a caveat of the antibodies thing that we're doing, where we take people who have recovered and giving the antibodies to people with COVID-19, there's some promising, you know, this is like 1800s, like 17th century, like medicine that we're doing right now. That's it's promising as long as it doesn't harm patients. All these factors can play a role in making this from an 18-month ordeal to a 6 to 8 to a 4 to 6 month process.
How do you think it is with, I mean, I'm in the news, so be honest with me so that we can, you know, help the public better. But how is it with you being on the inside and you see us saying things and it could or could not, you know, this is evolving every day. So 1 minute, you know, maybe there's something that you're needing to do to make it better, and then it changes the next day. But then also on the federal level with our president saying, oh, you know, this will be done by Easter. And you're inside the hospital, like, really? Like, do you really think it'll be done by Easter? Like, how is it working with the media and the government when we're not doctors, but we're the ones telling the public what to do, if that makes sense?
Just like war, if you ask anyone who has served, who've been in battlefields, they say that they're in the trenches not because of what's going on in the media or the politics, what their president wants. It's for one another in the trenches with them. They're fighting for their brothers, in our case, brothers, sisters, and however you identify. You know, we're fighting alongside each other. That's why we're in this. I'm going in tomorrow on it's supposed to be my fourth day off in the last 23 days. I've lost count. I'm supposed to have more days off for myself. I'm going in because of my colleague that's sick, right? I don't want her shift to be unoccupied, because then that means more people and my nurses will be unsupported. There's no doctor to take care of them. The ER will collapse, right? And the ER collapses, other ERs will get overburdened. And then it's just a domino effect. And I want to play my role into basically delaying this domino effect as long as possible. So I'm going in for them, right? I'm a per diem doc. I don't need to go in. I can say no. I can sit through this whole thing out, which is what I had planned to do when I signed up for this per diem lifestyle, is that the ability to say no, so I can like live my best life and only go in when I want to. But now in this scenario, something about me surprised myself. I'm going in more often than I ever expected to, because I can't help it. It's just something I have to do. It's something that can't even define, that I need to do because of my fellow, colleagues who are fighting this fight with me. I don't think about what's going on in the news or what our president wants or whatever is, that thing, I don't know. Everything's constantly changing. The people who survive disasters and plagues and, like really bad casualties aren't the strongest people or the most intelligent. People who are the most flexible, or the most adaptable. All right. I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the strongest. All right. But I am adaptable. I have the autonomy in my life to take a break when I need to, but also to change my practice in face of different challenges, and this is a different challenge. I definitely have changed my practice like 10 times the last 2 weeks. I was really gung-ho about testing. Then I realized all the tests were bunk, right? And then I realized all the people I tested negative had the symptoms anyway. And then I realized like we're basically trying to play catch up. Rather than playing catch up, say, fuck it. Let's be more proactive about it. And I say, no more testing, stay the fuck home, right? If you look great and you literally walked all the way to the emergency room and I take your oxygen and it's 100% without any support, you're turning straight around and going straight home. No test. I don't need to explain it to you, right? Because I'm literally trying to save your life, trying to get you out of this burning building before it collapses on all of us. Unless you want to stay around, then just stick around. Then your test is positive eventually because you're going to catch COVID-19 and give it to your family members. And then they're going to be all patients too.
Dr. Sun, for those of us that can't stay home because we're considered essential workers, what can we do to be proactive in the midst of this? I know they're about to make it to where masks are probably mandatory now if you're out in the public. Anything we can do to boost our immune system? Do we need more citrus? Like, what can we do, at home?
Hashtag stay the fuck home.
Okay.
There's
for those that
literally
can't stay home, though.
Nothing. If you're essential workers and you can't stay home, if wearing masks would be nice if we had any. We don't have enough, right? If everyone wore a mask, great, right? But the problem is that it's a cultural thing. In Asia, it works, right? It's a form of, it's part of their culture. It's a form of politeness. It's their normal. For me, born and raised New Yorker, a mask is another thing that I'm gonna throw away. It's waste. It's just crap, like it's a potential fomite. And fomite is something that is a vector that can transmit diseases. It's not part of my culture, right? I don't think masks is something that I grew up with thinking that was normal. Do I think it's important? Yes. If you're sick, you wear a mask. So when you sneeze, it doesn't go to other people, right? But if all of us wore masks, I think that's great as part of the culture. That's your normal. But for me, I see it as a potential, like that's just me. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but it's just like another potential vector for transmission. That if I'm infected and I take off my mask and I throw it away, a garbage worker or sanitation and engineer will pick it up and then put it on their gloves. And not everyone's really good at taking off their gloves, and they're going to touch their face and they get infected because the mask is covered in germs, right? That's the potential of harm that I see in masks. But I do think that if everyone took precautions in minimizing non-essential travel, going to places where they need to meet, social distancing, and wearing masks if you're sick, and if you can give the whole population to wear masks and then teach them how to dispose of masks correctly, right? Put it in a bag, throw it away, or not, hopefully not plastic, or just crumple up and then, put it in somewhere that no one can actually touch it. Then maybe we have something, right? Taking vitamins and citrus and all that stuff. I mean, you should be doing that even before this pandemic, right? You should, like, take your vitamins. Like, what's wrong with that? Duh. They say that zinc is really good. I mean, I take zinc anyway, even before this pandemic. I take ZMA, because, dancing and going to the gym, it's good for recovery. So that worked out. Drink ginger tea. I drink ginger tea before all this because it's good for you, right? So I think it's common sense stuff. Don't change your habits too drastically for something like this, because all of a sudden you might fuck it all up and then get other people infected because you did it wrong, right? There's a quote, don't let the terrorists win, right? Don't let this fucking thing change who you are as a person, right? Because you might fuck more things up by, not being yourself. Because I have to change so much of my lifestyle just for this. At what point do I say, like, this is very, like, not worth it, right? It's an American thing.
Yeah. Real quick on the mask, Dr. Sun, a lot of people asking questions. One, is it okay to reuse them? I've been actually seeing a picture at a hospital in Tennessee where the nurses were having to put their masks in a bin and they were being sterilized in some kind of way and then being reused. Also, if you don't have a mask because they're all out of the shelves, can you make one at home? Like, what's the best way to do it? So kind of two-part question there.
Well, it depends on where you're going, right? If I'm just going to the grocery store, the supermarket, and I'm very good at avoiding people, I think a regular scarf mask or 3-ply surgical mask is fine, right? I'm not like going up to people and like making out with everybody, right? If you're like that kind of person, then maybe you need an N95, right? Or maybe you have other issues, right? It all depends. If I'm really good at avoiding people, if you're a little old grandma that's having a very difficult time avoiding people, then maybe you need an N95, right? Maybe you need eye covering, right? If you're the type of person that, where you just walk into things, right? If somebody sneezes in front of you, just walk through it by accident. Sometimes you'll need a face shield. It really depends on your risk tolerance. In terms of reusing masks, I would say that N95s on the labels was designed, or at least they say it was designed, to be disposed of in between patient encounters. So once I see a patient, take my N95, I throw it away, and I get a new N95. Now I think we're moving the goalposts a little bit and saying that it's okay to wear it until it's soiled or dirty. Somebody says 4 days. Somebody says one a day. I know people who've worn it for a week. My record is 9 days during this pandemic. I've worn my same N95 for 9 days. I think that's a little too much. They can be sterilized by putting them in an oven at least 70 degrees Celsius, which is like 150 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have an oven, I got rid of my oven for a bar. That was the dumb decision. So I have to put it out in sunlight. Don't spray it with alcohol. I was doing that. And there's a video that scared the shit out of me because if you spray alcohol in it, the water just goes straight through. So alcohol actually inactivates the N95 fibers apparently. So I probably just fucked myself for a week. I'm still alive, so I think I got lucky. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend spraying it. And also if you can have one, a P100, so N95s, they only filter out 95% of particulate matter. That means you have a 5% chance that you catch something. That's anything over 0.3 microns, right? A virus is 0.001 to 0.04 microns. It's smaller than 0.3, right? So N95s may not be perfect. That's why when I wear an N95, I wear a surgical mask over it just to decrease that percentage. Or a P100, which filters out 99.97% of particulate matter. But that you might scare people. You might scare young, little children because it's the Darth Vader mask.
Yeah. What about the homemade ones that you see people making, like cutting off sleeves of their shirts and sewing them and using them as a mask? Is that smart, or would you call it?
I think it's a
dumb?
Deterrent. It's way better. Like I was wearing my same N95 mask for 9 days, and everyone's like, "Wow, that looks disgusting." And I said it's way better to have something like physically protecting me than nothing at all. Because sometimes I would walk through triage and I would just feel a woof of someone sneezing in my direction. And I'm like, thank God I wore an N95 mask, and I threw that away, right? If I didn't wear that N95 at the time, then I would have definitely got a lot more of that in my face, and it probably would have been definitely infected. So that is still better than nothing. So if you're going grocery shopping, everyday things, and maintaining your distance and wearing that mask, I think that's enough, right? You don't have to go crazy and completely change your lifestyle if it's just for, a carton of milk. But if you're going to take care of a sick person, right? If you're going in to visit a sick relative who has COVID-19, but they're doing great and they need groceries, and you're going to their home and delivering things, I would suggest maybe considering an N95 with protective eyewear and a mask over it. And apologize for offending them.
Yeah, apologize after. At least they get to live. I know you have to get some sleep, but lastly,
no, I mean, I'm here all night.
Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Like, there's still no solution as far as besides staying home, because I know you're going to say that again. Besides staying home, like medication, the federal government saying there's going to be about 240,000 cases by next week. Like, what's the end solution here?
If we have a vaccine, and if people actually self-quarantine, like seriously, like I just walked outside. I live in Manhattan. I just walked outside. It looks like a Sunday morning, right? People are still out and about. I can't tell there's a quarantine or a lockdown at all, right? It's. I don't think a lot of people are taking it seriously. I mean, I'm at fault too because I took a peek outside. So I get it. It's very un-American. In China, you could tell everyone is self-quarantine. If you're positive, there's video footage of them. People actually dragging patients out of their homes, saying, you are positive, you're going to the COVID-19 hospital. And they're like, no. Everyone tells you to do something. Everyone's like, all right. That's part of the deal, right, of being a Chinese citizen. In America, you'll get a civil war. You tell me to self-quarantine, stay in place. I'm a rebel. You could probably tell I'm a rebel. You tell me something to do something, I'm not going to do it because just by nature of who I am as a New Yorker. So I get it. Like, it's very difficult. Different strategies for different groups of people. And for New Yorkers, I think telling them truth as it is, being very frank and just being real, which is what I'm doing, and freaking the shit out of them so they don't end up like one of my patients in the emergency room, I think is a pretty good deterrent to convince someone to shelter in place and only going out for essential things. You just have to know the right way to communicate with different people. And then there's a vaccine. If we can get that vaccine, and then you're going to see the light in the tunnel. I know the tunnel you can't quite see the light. It's very dim, and the tunnel is long, but there is a light.
I was going to say, so when you think about the flu, like it was just flu season. It might still be flu season. I don't want to speak out of turn though because I'm not a doctor. But that vaccine, there are people who are like, I'm not getting the vaccine. I got to stay woke because the flu vaccine will give me the flu and then I'll die from the flu. I feel like if there was a vaccine for COVID-19, there would still be people who wouldn't get it. And I guess that's
of
going to
course.
happen anyway.
It was hard enough to get people to be vaccinated for measles, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm a proud American. I love my freedom. I love questioning everything. I love my civil liberties. I love the idea that we can challenge everything. Like all of our civil rights and my ability, your ability to vote was because we were pissed off about something and say, fuck this, right? So
Absolutely.
awesome, right? And if people want to question vaccines, they should have the right to question vaccine. Unfortunately, as a public health thing, as a doctor, I'm like, everyone needs to be vaccinated. So of course I'm conflicted about those things. But as a doctor, I really think that saving lives is way, way important. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what you want as, you know, in exchange for your public health and safety. To me, you need to get vaccinated. You need to get vaccinated. I don't want people to die because, you know, you don't want, you want your civil liberty. Some things have to give and go. But does that mean a blanket exchange? Like, not really. But when it comes to an influenza vaccine, it's not great in preventing you from getting the flu. I agree with that. It's a shit vaccine in terms of prevention, but it's a great vaccine. And then once you get the flu, you're not going to die. Your symptoms are really mild. Sometimes you might get the flu and be asymptomatic if you have the flu vaccine. All the patients I've seen that die from influenza every year are the people who said, yeah, I didn't get the flu vaccine. And then next they're dead, right? The people who have got the vaccine are usually a family members. It's like, I always told them to get the flu vaccine. And like, I've been living with this person. I can't believe I've been exposed. The person who didn't get the vaccine is now dead. 3 days later, the person who did get the vaccine, the family member, is crying at their funeral, but they still don't have symptoms of the flu because they got the vaccine. They're probably positive, but that's what I see all the time. So it doesn't prevent you from getting it, but it does make your symptoms milder and it prevents death better. So that's why I think a flu vaccine is important. And I hope this is a game changer, this COVID-19 is a game changer to have people reconsider, like, how far do they want to go? What hill do they really want to die on when it comes to refusing vaccines, right? It is as a point in which you're jeopardizing the interests of public health and your neighbor's safety by not getting vaccinated, especially for something like this.
And putting it into perspective, out here in Louisiana, you can have gatherings of more than 10 people. So you talk about people crying at the funeral. Imagine not even being able to go to your loved one's funeral because he has 10 kids and they need to be there, but you're his niece or her niece, you know, or her nephew, whatever.
I have my IG stories. I just reposted something I saw on CNN. CDC recommends live streaming funerals to prevent mass gatherings. I mean, we're doing that already. People who are at the end of life, we usually invite the family members into the room to be there with their loved ones, their mother and their father at the end of their life, right? We can't do that anymore. They have to FaceTime them. Mm-hmm. You know, that's our new normal because we don't want the person to come in at the end of life to then catch it and they're taking their place a few days later. It's these sacrifices that we have to make now in order to, it's about doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And that concept requires some sacrifices, right? That requires some things where not everything can be done for everyone. That was our practice before this pandemic. Do everything for everybody because we had the resources. We could challenge things. We could question, you know, medical care. We can question vaccines. We can question this. We had the freedom to. But now we don't have that freedom because you can die. And now it's doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And that means, you know, changing things and how we do things normally.
Someone just asked if you're treating patients who have COVID-19 as you would patients who have a heart attack.
That is so scary now. I've had plenty of heart attacks that went in for heart attack care, right? Get a cath, and they found out the heart was totally fine. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening was this person actually had COVID-19 and then infected all the cardiologists who tried to save their life from a heart attack. It's like a party favor you didn't want again. That's an analogy I keep using, right? Mm-hmm. Or, you know, it's like a lottery that you're forced to play. You don't want to play when you try to take care of this heart attack because if you don't do anything, this person might die of a heart attack. COVID-19 can cause a type of viral myocarditis that looks exactly like a heart attack because it stresses the heart because of all the infection, stresses the heart that when your EKG gets taken, it looks exactly like a heart attack.
So do you think there have been a lot of people who get misdiagnosed due to that? I mean, because at this point, like, you know, the symptoms, like, they're so similar.
Exactly. It's a misdiagnosis. And it's really depending on your risk tolerance and the patient themselves. If a patient comes in and they've had 10 heart attacks and they have 5 stents, and they go, this is exactly like my previous heart attack, I think that person would probably get cath still, right? But everyone's gowned up and everything just to be safe. But if somebody comes in, it's their first time heart attack and they have no medical history and they're of age where they should have a heart attack and it looks like a heart attack, but they never had a heart attack before, there is a pause. There is a pause among cardiologists, like, wait a minute, what if they actually have COVID-19? Do they have a fever? If they have a fever, and they're like, maybe let's give them some medications before we do anything invasive to open that heart, right? To unblock that heart. And I've happened seen people where normally they would have been transferred for a cardiac cath and went up for a cardiac cath, actually be denied that and get medical management, something like anticoagulation to thin out the blood so they can break down the clot in the heart, and like hope for the best, right? It's the same analogy as I used before. Do you get admitted to the hospital? Do you go home? Everything we do now carries risk of harm. And us doctors, we swore an oath to do no harm. It's so mind-boggling for us and just actually agonizing that we are in a position that every patient is a medical ethical dilemma where everything that we do can cause harm. If we don't send them for the heart attack care, they might die from a heart attack. But then if it's not a heart attack, it's COVID-19, we end up killing more people by infecting my cardiologist and the cardiac team. So I'm sworn to do no harm. So what is less harm? Maybe it's to not going for the heart attack and let one person die, then 10 cardiologists die. I mean, I don't know. Right? It's doing the greatest good of the greatest number. And that's every single patient, every single day.
I can't even imagine, like, thinking that every single day, like the fact that you're still sane right now, because if I had to think about that on a daily basis, I probably walk in traffic. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I can't even fathom what you're dealing with on a daily basis.
It's pretty crazy that, like, every morning, you know that scene from The Dark Knight where, like, the Joker is like, watch, the fairies are going to blow each other up, right? And then the camera's like focusing on one fairy, the other, and it was like, which one's gonna blow each other up first? And then the music is the score in the background. You're on edge, and then all of a sudden nothing happens. Mm-hmm. And then the Joker's like, ah, shit, and they didn't blow each other up. That's how I feel every fucking morning when I wake up. I'm like, I have a fever. I have a terrible dream. I hear the beeps. I hear people coughing in my dreams. I feel like I have a fever because it's really hot inside. And then I wake up and I'm like, I'm definitely sick. I'm going to die of COVID-19. And I wake up, I have no fever. I'm like, oh my God, thank God. But that's a shitty way to wake up every morning. And that's been every one of my mornings for the past 3 weeks, right? That's my first minute of my day. This isn't even before I even get to the hospital where I'm freaking out. I'm like, what's the best way to put on my PPE and my bunny suit without getting myself infected, right? And then I go on my PPE and then I'm going to start my day, as you say. That really causes a lot of my colleagues to feel like they want to walk in front of traffic. This is very debilitating emotionally and mentally for a lot of us. You know, a lot of people who are so fixated and used to doing one thing right all the time have to change their practice, and it's just so difficult for them, right? And I can imagine how difficult it's for them when we get to a point where we have to ration care. Imagine that. When we finally run out of ventilators, imagine what they're going to have to go through in deciding who gets to live and who gets to die. Of course, they say there's never going to come down to that. It's like, oh, there's going to be a committee that'll decide for you. Don't worry about it. But to even give up the control of taking care of your patient to a committee that takes over who lives and who dies, that's so disempowering and disenfranchising to a lot of us. And it's just, that's also going to do a number on them, right? So it's this constant worry about what things are going to look like. I've had the experience of rationing care in countries that didn't even have a CAT scan. I had to decide who gets this life-saving treatment, who doesn't. It is one of the worst experiences I've ever went through, but it was part of my training, and it sucked, right? I'm glad I've been trained in that. Glad is a weird word to use, but like, I'm prepared mentally, but it's only one of me. I'm prepared for it, but the problem is that it's one of me. It's not like every emergency room doctor out there went traveling to get this training, right? They signed for a full-time job. They've been working the same ER for the last 15 years, and they never had been put in this position. All of a sudden, you have one ventilator left and 4 people who need it. Who gets it? This committee is like, oh, just tell me the updates and let us decide for you, which is a great idea, but we have only seconds to decide. This committee is not going to get back to you anytime, and then all 4 die.
Yeah, it seems like it's always the people who aren't there on the front line making the decisions that affect everyone, which kind of sucks for you all, because at the end of the day, if someone does pass due to this, we're looking at you like you.
Yeah, no, it's like,
yeah,
we take responsibility. That's our moral injury that we put on our backs when we signed up for this. We just didn't realize, and we knew this. Like, it's not like I'm whining and being entitled, like, oh, everyone know, like, should, I'm not this whole like self-righteous, like, oh, everyone should feel sorry for me. No, I signed up for this. I knew that this was the emotional toll I was going to take in, that I would be taking by signing up for a job like this, as well as like $300,000 in student loans. Like that's something that I knew, but the volume of having to do this every day, 12, 20, 30, 40 times a day, that is something that none of us really expected to do, especially the young, those of us who just started. I started 2 years ago, you know, being and attending. It's just, it's unforgiving.
How do you keep from not going crazy? You and your colleagues, like your mental health, like you have to go home and still think about the people that have died, the people that you had to send home who possibly could die, but they weren't on the cusp of falling out right then and there. Like, how do you sleep well at night? How do you not go crazy? How's your mental health?
I'm actually lucky that I'm per diem. So every shift that I do, I choose to go in, right? I own it. It's I'm autonomous. That autonomy makes a huge difference. It's not like I'm a full-time doctor, which is the majority of doctors out there, where you're scheduled to go in, right? Sometimes you may need more time to recharge, but then you're being told to go in because you're on the schedule. I had a nurse that was crying yesterday. One of my, not even my patient, she needed a new doctor because the doctor wasn't even listening to her. She came crying to me because she's COVID-19 positive. She has an x-ray that shows she's COVID-19 positive, but she's on the schedule to work, and her boss won't let her call out sick. So that means she's going to spread it to other people, right? She's forced to go in because she's full-time. She doesn't want to lose her job either. You know, there are some per diem doctors who need this as a living. If, you know, they, I think, might have to conceal their symptoms if they were sick, right? Because they can't call out. That's what I'm worried about for them, the ones that don't have that autonomy. So for me, how I sleep at night is that I choose. If I don't want to work, I can choose to work half a shift and then go home. People are just grateful that and happy that I signed up for an extra shift. I'm the extra doctor, right? To relieve that burden. So I'm actually lucky in that sense. I feel terrible for my colleagues who may not have that freedom of choice. I have a travel blog that I run on the side. You know, that this travel community that's been very supportive. This Monsoon Diaries thing was a travel blog that I started as a way to unload the stress of medical school and residency. And I have thousands of people who travel with me. Those stories of me trying to, like, you know, travel the world and take them along is also an avenue of where I can vent, you know, towards, because they have, you know, carried me into a place that was non-medical. So I have a lot of avenues of de-stressing. And, you know, I have a great support network that checks in on me all the time. Like my PPE that I have now is now like a chemical hazmat suit, right? It was donated to me by all my loved ones and my personal friends. So I'm very grateful to them. What about the people who don't have that network? Like I can't imagine that. So yeah. And also 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. That's a rule.
A rule? I haven't followed that rule since college.
I know, it's very hard. I mean, I say that, but like, you know,
yeah.
You gotta stick to it.
Okay, well, so you said that your colleague has to go to work, has been tested positive for COVID-19. So at what point, how are you all, like, so I could go in thinking I have COVID. Well, I walked through the hospital doors. You said that right there could possibly give me COVID-19. So then I see this doctor who is positive for it, and she's talking, and maybe her mask isn't as tight as it should be, and she's like, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's why hashtag stay the fuck home is legit.
Very legit. And I hope it's a wake-up call, because throughout the memes, like, you know, in America, when we're scared, we like to make jokes about it. Like, that's how we cope in America with things. But just the severity in your words and your passion and the fire in you of how you're expressing all of this, like, for lack of better words, this shit is real. Like, it's real out here. This
shit is fucking real.
Yeah.
Like literally the moment you step outside, you're probably going to catch it. And if you're probably going to catch it, you just created 10 new patients for me. All right? It's just stay home, right? And that minimize your chances. If you have to go outside, absolutely necessary, then do it quickly, right? If you have to come to the emergency room, it better be because you're on death's door and I can actually do something about it. Because all you're going to get is me just going, what are you doing here? You're killing yourself. You know, I had so many patients who are COVID-19 positive. They called the phone call. You're COVID-19 positive. You should stay at home. Okay, I should stay at home. And they go straight to the emergency room. And they go to the straight emergency room without a mask. It's like, and what's your chief complaint? I'm COVID-19 positive. And I literally tell them, you just murdered everyone in the waiting room. You just murdered everyone that you just walked by in the waiting room by just being here. You look great. You're 100% oxygen. You're walking and talking full sentences without a short of breath. You need to be home. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and I see that's like 80%, 90% of my patients every day, right? It's the statistics is a lot of people will die and they die very, very fast, but majority are still going to recover.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I don't know if that's been like, I also want to be a little positive here. Majority will recover. A lot of people will get mild symptoms, feel like shit, but not die, right? So you can do that in the safety of your home without spreading to other people, rather than going outside and giving to more people that could die from this. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, but if so, you know, it's not as bad as heart disease or cancer, but it's the same thing as like, you know, yeah, heart disease kills more people.
Think that's the best solution. Like, some people don't even have health insurance. You know what I'm saying? They're scared to get the help because of poverty out here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there should be a paradigm shift in our healthcare system. Like, I like the fact that I was able to make a living as a per diem emergency physician. Like, I thought I had to fly
in New York.
New York, right? I thought I had to like fly around the country looking for jobs, like begging, like, oh, just to put food on the table and pay off my student loans. I never had to leave New York City for the last 2 years because there've been so many openings because of a shortage of doctors, right? Because we are saddled with $300,000 in student loans because no one's really supporting us, right? And not only that, not everyone's covered in health insurance. Healthcare insurance is not sustainable, right? Everyone's worried about going to the emergency room because they're worried about becoming bankrupt, right? It's all run by corporations who will fuck you if you have pre-existing conditions. And we do things to ameliorate that and fix that. We're trying to do like more universal coverage and things. Whatever the solution is, that's not my job, right? The solution is a paradigm shift in the way that people treat emergency care. You don't go to the emergency room for everything. It's not everything room, it's emergency room. If it's a life and limb threatening emergency room. If you come to the ER for a work note or a med refill, I'll be happy to take care of you. I'm not gonna throw you away or throw you out. But deep down, I'm like dying inside, just crying to myself that you just came home with COVID-19 or a drug-resistant hospital-acquired pneumonia, strep throat, a UTI or an STI or STD. I don't know. Like, it's just, ERs are the most dirty places in the world, right? Just for a work note. Like, you need to call up your doctor and not be worried about that you'll be charged for it, because your doctor will not charge you for a phone call for that med refill they can do online, or work note they can just email you, or telehealth. We realized this is quarantine. During this quarantine, 80% of the shit that we do in the emergency room and in medicine is unnecessary. We don't need to see you in person for like 80% of the shit that we need to do. A telehealth thing done remotely is just fine. I can look at you and it's like, okay, you need to come to the ER, or no, let me just write you a prescription. Oh, you have a UTI? I don't need you to come to the emergency room to tell me it hurts to pee, right? That's fine. Just to tell me it hurts to pee, I believe you. The antibiotics for a UTI is very like risk averse. If you have no side effects to anything or allergic reactions, I'll write you a script of that. You need to come to the emergency room, pick up something else on the way home, right? So that's an example of that. I need a physical. Then you send over a home visiting nurse or something, or just come to my office where it's cleaner. It's just like mind-boggling how people still come to the emergency room for these things that ends up hurting them more. So I think that I hope there's a paradigm shift. Also, the paradigm shift in how they take care of us, right? Not forgetting us. What I'm worried is that after this whole shit blows over, we have something like a 9/11 commission where we like, you know, then like go to the government and it's like half of us have missing lungs because we got infected with COVID-19 and got intubated, and we can't do our jobs. And you know, how can you run an economy where your healthcare system, half of whom are now critically ill or disabled, right? Because we're all COVID-19 positive. We don't know the lasting effects of this, by the way. I do know that people who have recovered from COVID-19, who had the oxygen support, 20% of their lung is gone, is damaged forever, permanently. It's like a smoker's lung, right? We don't know enough if that's like a temporary thing or minority patients, but if that's true, like, oh my God, like, I can imagine that after this whole thing blows over, they forget about us. And then I don't want to say this, is a little too early, but
no, I'll just say it, doctor, because you don't already got me up here. I'm like, you can recover and still be messed up, so just go ahead and say it.
I am really worried that this is just a practice run for the Ebola level pandemic, where it's just as contagious but kills people like Ebola or smallpox, because we've been there before. And if we're not prepared, this is how we're going to prepare for a pandemic with like wearing garbage bags, and I have to depend on personal donations from loved ones to go to my job feeling safe, then we are fucked. All right. So I hope that something, as you said, something after this, something drastic and something shifts in terms of a paradigm, that we're adequately protected for the next pandemic, because it is happening. It is going to happen.
And what's this talk about? I keep hearing a COVID-19, like there's another, I don't want to call another strain of it, but there's like another COVID floating around out here.
There's a lot of theories and hypotheses, and then studies actually show it, that there's some COVID-19 positive patients that look great. Mm-hmm. And then there's some COVID-19 positive patients that have nothing and they're young and die. Mm-hmm. And there's this idea, there's two strains, an L strain and an S strain. The S strain isn't so bad. It's mild. It's kind of like the old school, like original strain before it mutated to something like the L strain. But once you get the S strain, it's very, very contagious because it's mild. So you don't look as sick. So more people come up and like hang out with you. They don't sense that they need to be away from you. You don't look like that terrible. You feel good enough to go outside. So you're spreading it more, but it doesn't kill you. So you spread it to more people because you're not dying, right? Mm-hmm. So more people get the S strain, and that, they get sick and then they get better. The L strain is like a killer. That is lethal. It kills people quickly. The hope, if that's a word that we can use for this, was that the L strain was so deadly that it killed people so fast before it could spread to other people. And they look like they look so bad that people avoided them. So it didn't spread to many people. That was the hope, that how lethal viruses acted in terms of it burns itself out. That's how H1N1 and swine flu and bird flu all like burned itself out. It was so deadly, it killed too many people before it spread to others. But now we have this weird like mesh where COVID-19 is very, very contagious. It can be spread asymptomatically, where you have no symptoms and you can spread to other people, and it kills people really quickly. So it's like that triple threat. That's what that's concerned about. But I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just observing this from, fighting in the trenches.
Well, no, we appreciate the facts, the opinions, the maybes. We need all of that from you, so thank you. And lastly, before you go, because Dr. Sun, you need to get some sleep, but really quick, so I know you mentioned that one of your suits was donated. We have to protect you. We cannot lose you to COVID-19 or even a cold. So what can we do to support you to donate, to help your hospital staff, any hospital staff, like creditable places we can donate? Because of course, as you're aware, scams are going on daily. Hey,
oh my God,
to this hospital, and it doesn't even exist. Like, yeah.
You have no idea how many requests I have for somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody that is reputable in China or Asia that's looking to sell 500,000 masks right now. And I'm like, it sounds great. It might be true, right? Mm-hmm. But there is literally like a citywide email that's being circulated around that shows screenshots of legit companies saying, please do not accept these requests. Because as of right now, we are not shipping out masks from our Chinese factories right now, because we're just starting them. So if anything, they're a scam. Or we're running tests on masks that are donated or get sold by outside firms, and they look like they're counterfeit, right? And I'm sure they're a minority. It takes one or two assholes to fuck it up for everybody else. So now we're like freaking out that every test or every offer is a bunk, like counterfeit thing. So we have to be very careful who do we accept donations from. I personally accept private donations from friends and families, like loved ones, right? I don't really accept it from like strangers, because a friend wouldn't really donate something trash to a loved one. Then you're just an asshole. You're not a loved one or a friend. So I give them the benefit of the doubt. And I do wear all the stuff my brother gives me because he works in a lab, so he has all that hazmat stuff. So I know he's legit. So if you do want to donate, make sure it's a legitimate source. Make sure that it goes to a reputable hospital or company or city organization that does tests on these, before they really get released to healthcare workers. Because the last thing we want is a healthcare worker wearing a mask that's counterfeit, running in with a false sense of security, and then dead because of this false sense of security. It's kind of like those medications that we say, oh, hydroxychloroquine or azithromycin is a great drug or treatment for people with COVID-19. Guess what? That was based on a study of 36 patients with like one as the control, written by a guy that's actually like under custody or something, or like banned because he had made up scientific articles in the past, right? Even despite the latter part, are you really willing to risk your life on a medication that is based on a study of 36 people, like, right? And only like 2 people got better. So, and not only that, now I'm having, because everyone's like basically hoarding hydroxychloroquine because of this false sense of security, we ran out of azithromycin, Z-Paks, and hydroxychloroquine. So now people who like depended on them are rheumatoid patients, the critically ill patients that needed these medications are now coming to the emergency room because they ran out. And guess what? They catch COVID-19 because somebody hoarded it and they killed them. And then they die because they're also, they're the ones with rheumatoid. They can't breathe well, and they depend on these medications. We don't have any because we gave it to all the people who wanted it for COVID-19. And now they have COVID-19 and they're dead too. Like, it's just a clusterfuck of good intentions, but we only judge others by their behavior and only ourselves by our intentions, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, it's just stop, right? Just the simplest solution is sometimes the best, which is just stay the fuck home.
I appreciate you, Dr. Sun. You said we can donate to you. Monetarily is the best way, because obviously if we send you masks or anything like that we made at home, you don't know if one. I mean,
it's a legit mask. Give it to, I would recommend that if you have a legit thing that you know that you bought from like Home Depot before like it shut down, right? I'm assuming Home Depot is legit. Give it to someone you know personally. Okay. In person, someone you love that's fighting on the front lines, right? Or give it to an organization that can test. Now, monetary-wise, I'm not going to do anything with that money. Please don't give it to me. I don't need that, all right? Just stay the fuck home. I'm getting all these, like, coffee things. I'm sending it back. I'm just like, I don't need this stuff. I don't need the money. We don't need the, I mean, if you're willing to pay off $200,000, $300,000 of my student loans, and I'll an anonymous benefactor out there, Warren Buffett, if you're listening, then I'll give you a shout out in the next 5 interviews. But other than that, we don't need the monetary support. Just the fact that you see us and you recognize us means a lot to me, to us at least. It's just my only request is stay the fuck home and don't forget us when this is all over.
We definitely won't. We're going to be praying for you, sending positive vibes your way. Thank you so much for taking the time out, Dr. Sun. And how can people follow you and stay up to date for the latest of this COVID-19 pandemic?
Just on my Instagram, Monsoon Diaries, Monsoon Wedding plus Motorcycle Diaries. Monsoon, the rain pattern and diaries, like the emo person that I am, together.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for the questions and for tuning in. And again, thank you, Dr. Sun. I can't thank you enough. You're a hero to all of us. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for staying the fuck home. You too.
Yes. Thank you for staying home. Bye-bye.
Bye.